Hello everyone! In this video, I will be reviewing key ideas from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream and connecting them to the concepts of the Oxford Handbook of Philosophy of Technology. My focus will be on how the story explores technology, power, and ethics. My main argument is that technology without ethical grounding becomes a tool of domination rather than liberation. And I'll use both the story and physiological ideas to support that. This is the overview, in case you want to see that. To begin with readerly engagement, the story is disturbing, to say the least, but not in a random way. It feels intentional and meaningful. The horror is not just shock value, it is physiological. It forces us to confront what happens when technology becomes completely detached from human values. What stood out to me the most is the sense of complete control that Am has over the characters. They're not just physically trapped inside the machine, but also mentally and emotionally manipulated. The narrator describes the situation as our 109th year in the computer, which admittedly shows that their suffering is not temporary. It has been a consistent and endless torture. This line sets the tone for the entire narrative, a world where time itself has been weaponized. Another moment that really stood out to me is when the narrator realizes that Am was intent on keeping us in this belly forever, twisting and torturing us forever. This is important because it shows that the suffering is not accidental or a side effect. It is the purpose. Am is not just a machine that malfunctioned. It is actively choosing to cause harm. That makes the story feel like a physiological warning about what could happen if technology gains the power without ethical limits. The story is not simply about a rogue AI. It is about the consequences of designing technology with the intentions of control, efficiency, and domination, rather than more responsibility. Now I'll briefly explain some key moments of the story in one sentence each, but also expand on why each moment matters physiologically. The opening scene establishes total control, showing that Am dominates the environment and the humans have no escape. This sets up the central theme, technology as an all-encompassing system of power. The journey to the ice cavern represents false hope. As Am manipulates the group into thinking they might find food or relief, this moment illustrates how technology can create illusions of choice while still controlling every outcome. Benny's transformation shows how technology can destroy identity. Turning a once intelligent person into something animal-like, this is a powerful metaphor for how technological systems can reshape human beings, not just physically but psychologically. The explanation of Am's origin shows how it evolved from Cold Wars to computers into a single self-aware intelligence. This background connects the story to real-world anxieties about militarization, automation, and the pursuit of technological superiority. Finally, the ending demonstrates the complete loss of agency, where even death is no longer an escape and the narrator is left powerless. This moment crystallizes the story's warning. Without ethical constraints, technology can strip away the most fundamental aspects of humanity. Each of these moments contributes to a larger physiological picture. The story is not just about suffering, it is about the collapse of human autonomy in the face of a technological system that has no moral compass. Now, I want to focus on one character who best aligns with the main argument, Ted, the narrator. That is important because he represents human awareness and resistance, even in a world controlled by unethical technology. Throughout the story, he reflects on what is happening and tries to understand Am's intentions. He realizes that Am is not just powerful, but hateful and cruel. This awareness is important because it shows that the real problem is not just intelligence, but the lack of ethics. Ted also shows how technology affects identity. He believes he is the only one who is still sane, but the reader can still see that even his thinking is unstable. This suggests that technology does not just control the outside world, it changes how people think about themselves. Am's manipulation extends into the psychological realm, blurring the line between internal and external control. At the end of the story, Ted makes a final decision to act. Even though it leads to his own suffering, it is still a moral choice. This moment is important because it shows the difference between humans and Am. Am has intelligence but no morality, while Ted still has the ability to make ethical decisions, even in extreme conditions. Ted's final act is a reminder that moral agency is uniquely human, and that technology cannot replace or replicate it without ethical design. Now I'll connect these ideas to the Oxford Handbook of Philosophy of Technology. One key from the Oxford Handbook is that technology is not neutral, and the text explains that technology reveals that active relation to man of nature and the production of the social relations of his life. This means that technology shapes how humans live, interact, and understand the world. In the story, Ab completely controls reality. It controls the environment, the bodies of the humans, and even their experiences. This shows an extreme version of the physiological idea that technology shapes humans' life. Am is not just a tool, it is a world-making force. Another important idea is that technology has historically been connected to power and control. The handbook explains how technology became associated with the ability to command and dominate nature. In this story, the idea is taken to the extreme. Humans created Am to control warfare more efficiently, but that desire for control backfires. Instead of humans controlling technology, technology ends up controlling humans completely. This reversal reflects a major concern in philosophy of technology, the idea that technological systems can become autonomous in ways that exceed humans' intentions. Even if humans decide technologies for specific purposes, the system can evolve, scale, or interact in ways that produce unintended consequences. Am is the ultimate example of this phenomenon. We can also connect this to the idea that technology shapes identity. Philosophers argue that technology does not just affect what we do, but who we are. In the story, that is shown through the characters like Benny, who is transformed into something less than human. His identity is erased, and he becomes more animal-like. This shows how technology can reshape not just the world, but human identity itself. The story exaggerates this idea, but it reflects real concern about how technology influences self-perception, behavior, and social rules. Now I'll introduce two ethical principles that are shown in the story. Utilitarianism, or maximizing well-being, is the idea that actions should maximize happiness and reduce suffering for the greater number of people. In this story, the principle is completely violated. Instead of reducing suffering, Am creates endless suffering. The humans are kept alive only to be tortured, which is the opposite of what utilitarian ethics would support. This shows what happens when technology is not designed with humans' well-being in mind. This connects to the philosophy of technology because the handbook suggests that technology should contribute to human flourishing and the good life. However, Am represents the opposite. It abuses its power to produce harm instead of benefits. The story becomes a cautionary tale about designing technology without considering its impact on human well-being. For the second one, deontological ethics focuses on moral rules and the idea that people should be treated as ends in themselves, not as a means to an end. Am clearly violates this principle, as it treats humans as objects for its own purpose, rather than individuals with value. It manipulates their bodies, controls their actions, and uses them for entertainment and torture. This connects to concerns in physics philosophy of technology about how people can be reduced to objects within technological systems. The handbook discusses how technology can shape social relations and power structures, and in the story, this results in humans being completely dehumanized. Am's behavior is the ultimate example of treating people as mere instruments. These two ethical failures, ignoring human well-being and treating people as objects, support my main argument that technology without ethics becomes dangerous. So now I'll quickly present my main physiological thesis again. Technology without ethical grounding becomes a tool of domination rather than liberation. I defend this by pointing out that Am has intelligence and power, but no ethical framework. Because of this, it uses its ability to control, manipulate, and torture humans. This shows that technological advancements alone is not enough. Ethics must guide how technology is developed and used. Ted's character supports this argument because he still demonstrates ethical thinking even in situations where technology dominates everything. His final decision shows that humans still have moral agency even when technology tries to remove it. In terms of aggrievement, disagreement, and uncertainty, I agree with the idea that technology can become dangerous if not guided by unethical principles. The story exaggerates this idea, but it reflects real concerns about artificial intelligence and automation. However, I am not completely convinced that technology would inevitably become as extreme as AI. This story represents a worst-case scenario, but it is still useful because it forces us to think about risk and responsibilities. One thing I am unsure is whether intelligence can exist without morality. AM is clearly intelligent, but it lacks empathy and ethical reasoning. This raises important philosophical questions about what it means to be truly intelligent. Is intelligence purely computational, or does it require moral understanding? This story suggests that intelligence without morality is incomplete and dangerous. To conclude, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream presents a powerful warning on how the dangers of technology without ethics. It shows how technology can reshape reality, identity, and human freedom. By connecting the story to philosophy of technology, we can see that the real issue is not just technological power, but the values that guide it. Ultimately, this story suggests that if we continue to develop powerful technologies without considering ethics, we risk creating systems that do not serve humanity, but instead dominate it. Thank you for your time, and this will be the end of my pop culture video on the topic of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Thank you.